Still hiding among your precious books, Julia? Drew's voice cut through the quiet of the library's rare books section. Don't you get tired of wasting your life? I looked up from the leather-bound volume I was examining to find my brother leaning against a shelf, his designer suit a stark contrast to my modest librarian's attire. His smirk was the same one he'd worn since childhood, the expression of someone who believed he'd already won. "Hello, Drew," I said calmly, carefully placing the book back in its protective case. "I didn't expect to see you here. Mom sent me. She wants to make sure you're not going to embarrass us at their anniversary party tonight." He glanced around the library with poorly concealed disdain. "Though I suppose it's too late for that. A librarian in the family, Dad's still trying to explain that one to his golf buddies. My name is Julia Morgan, though my brother prefers the family disappointment. At 34, I was the head librarian at the city's central library, a position that made my old money family cringe. What they didn't know, what I'd carefully hidden for years, was that my life among the books was only half the story. I'll be there," I assured him, standing to my full height. Even in heels, he still towered over me. "And I'll dress appropriately." "See that you do." He straightened his Rolex, a recent purchase he hadn't stopped flaunting. "It's an important night. I'm announcing some big news." "Oh." His grin widened. "Bought my third company this year. Morgan Industries is now officially a conglomerate. Dad's going to be so proud." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. If Drew noticed the slight tightening of my hands, he didn't mention it. "That's wonderful," I said. "Congratulations." "Thanks." He didn't even try to make it sound sincere. "You know, there's still time for you to join the real world. I could use someone to manage our corporate library. At least then you'd be doing something useful with all this knowledge." The way he said knowledge made it sound like a disease. I smiled, thinking of the encrypted laptop in my office safe, of the meetings I'd been taking under a different name. "I'm happy where I am," I told him. He shrugged, already turning away. "Your loss. Remember, 7 o'clock sharp. And Julia?" He paused at the door. "Try not to bring any books this time." After you left, I waited exactly 5 minutes before heading to my office. The space was modest but efficient, with walls of books and a desk that had seen better days. To most, it looked exactly like what they'd expect from a librarian's office. They never noticed the state-of-the-art security system or the fact that my ancient desktop computer was a custom-built machine more powerful than most corporate servers. Locking the door, I opened my laptop and connected to a secure server. 3 windows popped up immediately, video calls waiting from Tokyo, London, and New York. "Good morning, Ms. Morgan." My assistant's voice came through clearly. "The Nakamura deal is ready for final review." "Thank you, Sarah," I said, scanning the documents on my screen. "Has legal finished their assessment?" "Yes, ma'am. The acquisition terms are solid. We can move forward whenever you're ready." I glanced at my watch. 5 hours until my parents' anniversary party. Plenty of time. "Schedule the signing for tomorrow morning," I instructed. "And Sarah, make sure everything's in place for the announcement." "Already done. The press release is ready to go." Though, she hesitated. "Are you sure about the timing?" I thought of Drew's smug face, of years of condescension and dismissal. "Yes, I'm sure. Tomorrow morning will be perfect." After ending the call, I sat back in my chair, looking at the empire I built in secret. Morgan Global Partners, no relation to my brother's Morgan Industries, despite the similar name, was now one of the largest private equity firms in the world. We operated entirely in the shadows, using shell companies and discrete investments to hide our true size. For 7 years, I'd built this company while maintaining my cover as a simple librarian. The job wasn't just a front. I genuinely loved books, loved preserving knowledge and helping people access it. But it also provided the perfect cover for my other life. Who would suspect the quiet librarian of being one of the most powerful people in global finance? My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Don't forget to do something with your hair, dear. The Prescotts will be there tonight." The Prescotts, one of many old money families my parents were always trying to impress. I texted back a simple "ok" and began packing up for the day. I had a hair appointment already scheduled, along with a fitting for the dress I'd bought specifically for tonight. Just because I didn't flaunt my wealth didn't mean I couldn't play the part when needed. The salon was empty when I arrived, perks of owning the building and having a standing private appointment. Maria, my longtime stylist and one of the few people who knew my secret, was waiting. The usual? She asked, gesturing to a chair. Something a bit more formal today, I said. Family event. She nodded knowingly. Ah, the famous Morgan anniversary party. Your brother was in earlier, talking about it to anyone who would listen. I'm sure he was. As Maria worked, I checked my emails on a secure phone. The Nakamura acquisition was proceeding smoothly. By this time tomorrow, Morgan Global Partners would own one of the largest tech manufacturers in Asia. The same company my brother had been trying to buy for months. Your brother mentioned he's buying some big company, Maria said, as if reading my thoughts. Couldn't stop bragging about it. I smiled. He's trying to buy it. There's a difference. She caught my eye in the mirror. You didn't? Let's just say tomorrow's papers will be interesting. 3 hours later, I stood in front of my mirror at home, examining my transformation. The simple librarian was gone, replaced by someone who could hold her own at any society event. The dress, a deep blue Valentino I'd had altered to perfection, was elegant without being flashy. My jewelry was minimal but expensive, the kind of pieces old money favored. Most importantly, I looked exactly like what my family expected, their bookish daughter making an effort to fit in. My phone buzzed with another text, this time from Sarah. Everything's set for tomorrow. Are you sure you don't want to tell them tonight? No, I replied. Let them have their party. Tomorrow will be soon enough. The Morgan family estate was lit up like a Christmas tree when I arrived. Cars lined up along the circular driveway. I recognized most of them. Bentleys and Rolls-Royces belonging to the same families that had been part of our social circle for generations. A valet appeared as I pulled up in my modest Audi, another carefully chosen prop. The car was nice enough to avoid embarrassing my parents, but not so nice as to raise questions about a librarian's salary. Miss Morgan, Jenkins, our family's longtime butler, greeted me at the door. Your parents are in the main hall. I could hear the party before I saw it, the murmur of sophisticated conversation, the clink of expensive crystal, the subtle notes of a string quartet. This was my parents' world, the one I'd chosen to step away from, at least publicly. Julia, my mother's voice carried across the hall. Darling, you look presentable. Coming from her, it was high praise. Elizabeth Morgan had never quite forgiven me for choosing books over business, but at least I'd made an effort with my appearance tonight. Happy anniversary, Mom, I said, kissing her cheek. You look beautiful. She did. At 60, she was still the epitome of grace and style. Her friends often joked that she'd made a deal with the devil to maintain her youthful appearance. Your father's by the fireplace, she said, already scanning the room for more important guests. Do say hello before you hide in the library. I made my way through the crowd, accepting air kisses and polite inquiries about my little job at the library. Most of these people had known me since childhood, had watched me grow up alongside their own children. None of them understood my choices. There's my girl. Dad's voice boomed as I approached. He was holding court with his usual crowd, golf buddies and business associates who'd been part of his life for decades. Come here, let them see you. I submitted to his enthusiastic hug, noting the slight slur in his words. He'd started the celebrations early, as usual. Still working with those books? Harold Prescott asked, his tone making it clear what he thought of such an occupation. Still working with those books, I confirmed. Someone has to preserve knowledge for the next generation. They laughed, the indulgent chuckle of people humoring what they saw as a harmless eccentricity. Speaking of the next generation, Dad said proudly, "Where's your brother?" He's got some big news to share. As if on cue, Drew appeared, champagne in hand. He changed into an even more expensive suit, his Rolex catching a light as he gestured. Everyone, he called out, his voice carrying across the hall. I'd like to make an announcement. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him. Drew lived for moments like this, had always thrived on being the center of attention. As some of you know, Morgan Industries has been growing rapidly this year, he began, playing to his audience. Today, I'm proud to announce that we're on the verge of our biggest acquisition yet. By this time next week, we'll own Nakamura Tech. The room erupted in applause. Dad beamed with pride, Mom dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I sipped my champagne and waited. Of course, Drew continued, the deal isn't quite final yet, but my sources tell me it's just a matter of time. The papers are ready to sign. That's wonderful, son, Dad exclaimed. Always knew you had it in you, a real businessman, just like your old man. Drew basked in the praise, accepting congratulations from all sides. Finally, his gaze fell on me. What do you think, little sister? He asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Ready to admit you backed the wrong horse. I met his eyes calmly. I think, I said carefully, that you shouldn't count your chickens before they're hatched. He laughed and others joined in. Always so cautious, Jules. That's why you'll never be more than what you are. Hiding in your library while the rest of us build empires. Perhaps, I agreed mildly, but at least I understand the value of due diligence. His eyes narrowed slightly. Drew had never liked it when I used big words, seeing it as a challenge to his intelligence. Due diligence? He scoffed. I've got the best lawyers in the business. Everything's taken care of. I just smiled and raised my glass. Then I guess we'll all see tomorrow, won't we? He frowned, catching something in my tone, but before he could press further, Mom was calling everyone to dinner. The dining room was a masterpiece of old-world elegance, gleaming mahogany, priceless china, crystal that had been in the family for generations. I took my assigned seat, noting with amusement that I'd been placed at the far end of the table, well away from any important guests. As the first course was served, Drew held court from his position near Dad, regaling everyone with tales of his business prowess. I kept quiet, responding politely when addressed but otherwise focusing on my food. I just don't understand, Mrs. Prescott said from beside me, her voice low. You were always so bright in school. You could have done anything. Why waste your life with books? I considered how to answer. In 12 hours, everything would change. But for now, I had a role to play. Books are never a waste, I said simply. They teach us that things aren't always what they seem. She shook her head, clearly disappointed by my response. Well, at least your brother is upholding the family name. Though it must be hard, watching him succeed while well, it's not as hard as you might think. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of subtle insults and backhanded compliments. I'd grown used to it over the years, had learned to let it roll off me like water. As dessert was being served, Drew stood again, calling for attention. I'd like to propose a toast, he announced, raising his glass. To Mom and Dad, who taught me everything I know about business, who showed me what real success looks like. He paused, his eyes finding me. And to my sister, who proves that not everyone is cut out for the family business. The room chuckled politely. I raised my glass with the others, thinking of the documents waiting to be signed, of the press release scheduled for morning. Enjoying the party, Drew asked later, cornering me by the dessert table. It's lovely, I replied. Mom and Dad must be so proud. They are. He straightened his tie smugly. Though it would have been nice if both their children had amounted to something. I selected a chocolate truffle, examining it carefully. You know, Drew, success isn't always about making the most noise. He snorted. No? Tell that to my bank account. How much does a librarian make these days anyway? Enough to buy those shoes. I glanced down at my Louboutins, another carefully chosen piece of my costume. I'm good with money. Right. He finished his champagne in one gulp. Well, this has been fun, but I should mingle. Big day tomorrow after all. That Nakamura deal isn't going to close itself. As he walked away, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Sarah. Everything ready for morning. Her response was immediate. All set. Press release goes out at 9 a.m. sharp. Want me to send you the final numbers? No need, I replied. I'll see them in the papers with everyone else. The party began winding down around midnight. I said my goodbyes, accepting one last round of condescending comments about my career choices. You really should consider Drew's offer, Mom said as I kissed her cheek. A corporate library would be so much more appropriate. I'll think about it, I promised, knowing I would do no such thing. As I drove home, I thought about how different tomorrow would be. For 7 years, I'd maintained my cover, building my empire in secret while my family dismissed me as the disappointing daughter who'd chosen books over business. Tomorrow, they'd learn just how wrong they'd been. The next morning, I arrived at the library precisely at 8, just as I had every day for the past 7 years. My sensible shoes echoed through the marble halls as I made my way to my office, nodding at the early morning regulars who never questioned why the head librarian kept such strict hours. Sarah was waiting for me, her tablet in hand. In the library, she played the role of my assistant librarian perfectly. Outside these walls, she was the COO of Morgan Global Partners and one of the sharpest business minds I ever met. "Everything's ready," she said quietly as we entered my office. "The lawyers are gathering in Tokyo. Press release goes out in 45 minutes. I set my bag down and powered up my secure laptop. "Any word from Drew's team?" "They're still expecting to close the Nakamura deal this morning. Your brother's lawyers are setting up in their offices right now." I smiled, imagining Drew's face when he realized what was about to happen. Let's give them a few more minutes of hope. At precisely 8:55, my private line rang. "Ms. Morgan," Mr. Nakamura's translator said, "everyone is in position." "Excellent. Let's proceed." The next few minutes were a blur of signatures and confirmations. By 9 a.m., Morgan Global Partners officially owned Nakamura Tech, along with its subsidiaries, patents, and cutting-edge technology division. "Press release going out now," Sarah announced. I pulled up several news sites on my screen, watching as the story broke across multiple platforms simultaneously. Breaking: mystery buyer acquires Nakamura Tech. Global finance giant Morgan Global Partners reveals identity of founder. Wall Street stunned as library sciences expert named as business mogul. My phone started buzzing immediately. The first call, predictably, was from Drew. "What the hell is this?" he demanded without preamble. "Some sick joke?" "Good morning to you too, brother," I replied calmly. "I take it you've seen the news." "This is impossible," he sputtered. "Morgan Global Partners. That's not. You're not the founder and CEO." "Actually, I am. Have been for 7 years now. Though I understand your confusion, after all, I'm just a librarian, right?" There was a long silence, broken only by what sounded like papers being frantically shuffled. But I had a deal. The paperwork was ready." "Was it?" I asked innocently. "You might want to check the fine print. Nakamura Tech has been in play for months. We've just been waiting for the right moment to finalize things." "We?" His voice cracked. "Who's we?" "My team, my company, my empire." I paused, letting each word sink in. "You know, the one I built while you were busy mocking my career choices." The line went dead. I looked at Sarah, who was trying to hide her grin. "How long until my parents call?" She checked her watch. "I give it 3, 2. Right on cue, my mother's number flashed on my screen. Julia Elizabeth Morgan. Her voice was shrill enough to crack glass. "What have you done?" "Good morning, Mom. I'm a bit busy at the moment. Perhaps we could discuss this over dinner." "Dinner? Dinner? Do you have any idea what's happening? Your father's phone is ringing off the hook. The Prescotts are calling. The club is calling. Everyone wants to know how our librarian daughter secretly built a multi-billion-dollar company." I could hear Dad in the background, apparently trying to field calls of his own. "Tell her to get over here right now," he shouted. "I have meetings all day," I said, which was true. The acquisition of Nakamura Tech was just the beginning. "But I'd be happy to host everyone for dinner at my place tonight. Say 7 o'clock. "Your place?" Mom's voice dripped with suspicion. "You mean that little apartment near the library?" "No, I mean my penthouse on Highland Avenue. I'll text you the address." There was a long pause. "Highland Avenue, but that's the most expensive building in the city." "Is it? I hadn't noticed. See you at 7, Mom." After ending the call, I took a moment to breathe. 7 years of secrets were finally coming to light. 7 years of careful planning, of maintaining my cover while building something extraordinary. "Ready for phase 2? Sarah asked. I nodded. "Send out the second press release." This one was even bigger than the first. Morgan Global Partners announces merger with East Asian tech giants. Deal valued at $50 billion. The merger had been in the works for months, but we timed it perfectly to follow the Nakamura acquisition. By the time my family arrived for dinner, the business world would be reeling from 2 of the biggest deals of the decade, both orchestrated by the quiet librarian they dismissed for so long. The rest of the day passed in a carefully choreographed dance of meetings, interviews, and strategic planning. I gave exactly one interview, to the Wall Street Journal, explaining how my background in library sciences had actually been perfect preparation for building a global empire. "Information is power," I told the reporter, "and who better to understand the value of information than a librarian?" At 6:30, I left the library and headed to my real office, the top floor of the Highland Avenue building that had been my home for the past 5 years. The penthouse occupied the entire floor, though I'd maintained a small apartment near the library for appearance's sake. My private elevator opened directly into the foyer, where my actual home office put Drew's corporate headquarters to shame. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, while state-of-the-art technology allowed me to manage my empire from anywhere into space. Sarah had arranged for dinner to be catered by the city's most exclusive restaurant, another establishment quietly owned by Morgan Global Partners. The dining room table was set with the kind of understated elegance that only old money could truly appreciate. At precisely 7 o'clock, the elevator announced my family's arrival. Drew entered first, his earlier swagger replaced by barely contained fury. Mom and Dad followed, both looking shell-shocked. Even Jenkins, who had insisted on accompanying them, seemed unsure how to process the transformation of the family's poor relation into one of the city's wealthiest residents. "Welcome to my home," I said, gesturing to the spectacular view. "Drink?" "How long?" Drew demanded. "How long have you been lying to us?" "Lying?" I moved to the bar, pouring myself a scotch. "I never lied about anything. I am a librarian. I do love books. I just happen to run a global financial empire as well." But why?" Mom sank onto one of my Italian leather sofas. "Why the deception? Why let us think that I was a failure? I finished for her, that I'd wasted my potential, maybe because you never bothered to look past your own assumptions. You saw what you expected to see, the disappointing daughter who chose books over business." Dad was standing by the windows, staring out at the city he thought he knew so well. "All this time," he murmured. "All those companies we've been reading about, the mysterious acquisitions. That was you," Drew said flatly. "Morgan Global Partners. The competition everyone's been trying to figure out. The shadow empire that's been reshaping the market." I smiled. "It does have a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Though I prefer to think of it as a knowledge empire. After all, that's what you taught me, isn't it, Dad? Knowledge is power." He turned to face me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something new in his eyes. Respect. "The Nakamura deal," he said slowly. "How long have you been planning that?" "About 6 months, though I've owned controlling interest in their subsidiaries for over a year." I looked at Drew. "You never wondered why they kept finding reasons to delay your offer?" My brother's face went from red to white. You've been playing me all this time." "Not playing, Drew, competing. Isn't that what you always wanted? A chance to prove who was better at business." "But it wasn't fair," he exploded. "You had inside information, secret resources." "Inside information?" I laughed. "You mean like the kind you get from your golf club buddies? The deals you make on private yachts and exclusive resorts?" I set my glass down carefully. "I built my empire with nothing but intelligence, hard work, and a deep understanding of how information flows. Everything I learned in my little library job gave me an edge you couldn't see." "Dinner is served," a voice announced discreetly. We moved to the dining room, the tension thick enough to cut with one of my sterling silver knives. Mom kept looking around as if trying to reconcile this environment with her mental image of my life. Dad seemed lost in thought, probably recalculating every business decision he'd made in the past 7 years. "I suppose," Mom said finally, staring at her perfect place setting, "this explains how you could afford those Louboutins." I couldn't help but laugh. "Yes, Mom. That's what you should focus on, my shoe budget." "What happens now?" Drew asked, pushing his food around his plate. "Going to buy out Morgan Industries too." "Actually, I have a different proposition." I nodded to Sarah, who appeared with a folder. "Your company has potential, Drew. Good bones, as they say in real estate. What it lacks is vision and modern infrastructure." He frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "A partnership. Morgan Industries handles the traditional side, while Morgan Global Partners brings the technology and global reach. Together, we could build something even bigger." "You want to work with me, after everything?" "No," I corrected him. "I want to work with the businessman you could be, if you got over your ego and learned to see value in unexpected places." Dad set down his fork. "Julia's right," he said, surprising everyone. "This is an opportunity, Drew. A chance to be part of something bigger than ourselves." "But she lied to us." Drew protested. Made us look like fools. No, Dad shook his head. We made ourselves look like fools. We were so convinced we knew what success looked like that we couldn't see it taking a different form. Your sister, she saw something we missed, built something we never imagined. Mom dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. All those times we pitied you, she said softly, worried about your future. I know, I said, gentler now. But maybe it's time to stop worrying about appearances and start focusing on substance. Isn't that what real business is about? The rest of dinner was a careful dance of revelations and reconciliations. I explained how I built my company, how the library had provided the perfect cover and connections. Dad asked increasingly detailed questions about my business strategy, his initial shock giving way to genuine admiration. Even Drew began to thaw as I outlined my vision for our potential partnership. By dessert, he was suggesting ways to integrate our operations. His natural business instincts finally focused on creation rather than competition. There's one thing I don't understand, Mom said as coffee was served. Why reveal everything now? Why not just stay in the shadows? I looked at my brother. Because sometimes people need to be reminded that success doesn't always wear a suit and tie. That power doesn't always announce itself with a Rolex and a corner office. And sometimes, Drew added quietly, people need to be reminded not to judge a book by its cover. Exactly. Later that night, after my family had left, Dad with a stack of proposals to review, Mom with a list of social events to recalibrate, and Drew with a lot to think about, I stood at my windows watching the city lights. Sarah joined me, handing me a fresh scotch. Well, that went better than expected. Did it? I smiled. Or did it go exactly as planned? You knew they'd react this way. I knew they'd have to confront their own prejudices, their assumptions about success and worth. I sipped my drink. The question is whether the lesson will stick. She checked her tablet. Stocks up 30% since the announcement. Your brother's company is up 10% just on rumors of a potential partnership. Good. Let's give it a week, let everything settle, then announce the merger. By then, Drew might actually be ready to be a real partner. And your parents? I thought about Mom's tearful apology, Dad's proud smile as he finally saw me, really saw me, for the first time. They're learning. Sometimes the hardest part of success is accepting that it doesn't always look the way you expect. The next morning, I'd arrived at the library at my usual time. The same regulars were in their usual spots, nodding hello to their favorite librarian. None of them treated me any differently, though my face was splashed across every business publication in the country. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. In a world obsessed with image and status, I built something real, something that didn't need designer labels or social validation to prove its worth. I was still a librarian. I still loved books. I just happened to be a billionaire, too. Knowledge, after all, comes in many forms, and sometimes the most powerful people are the ones you least expect.